In the name of the living God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. My text for this Sunday, this All Souls Sunday, is taken from the Gospel according to St. Luke, chapter 19, verse 5. Zacchaeus, hurry and come down. I must stay. Get a new battery. Thank you. So we'll move ahead with what we got. You know who they are. You know their names. You see them on TV. You read their stories while you stand in the checkout line at the grocery store. Kanye, the Kardashians, Brad Jolina. These are people of wealth. These are people of fame. These are people of notoriety. These are the paparazzi people, the People magazine people, the people that people love to hate. Hang on that in case. The reason we love them is firstly because they are wealthy. And wouldn't it be nice if we were wealthy too? And we also love them because they're famous. And it wouldn't it be great if we could see our picture in a magazine? And we love them because they're infamous. And they lead such fascinating and interesting lives, whereas my life is so dull and lifeless by comparison. And yet we also hate them because they are wealthy and make such a great display of their wealth. And we hate them because they're famous. And really, are they on TV in the news again? And we hate them because of their notoriety. How is it they get away with doing all that? These are the people who are famous, wealthy, who have notoriety. And we are the people who love to hate these paparazzi people, these People magazine people, these people who are just like Zacchaeus. Because when Jesus saw Zacchaeus sitting up in that tree, he knew who Zacchaeus was right away, not because Jesus was the Son of God and had special mental powers. Jesus knew who Zacchaeus was because everybody knew who Zacchaeus was. Because he was wealthy, he was famous, and he was notorious. And how do we know that he was so wealthy? Well, because firstly, where he lived, he was a resident of Jericho. And Jericho was like the oldest city on the planet. Jericho, beautiful Jericho, right there in the fertile valley of the Jordan. Jericho, which was the central location for the date palm industry in all the Roman world. Jericho, where you could look out across the plains for miles and miles and see nothing but date palm trees. It was absolutely beatific and rich. And it was only a day's journey from Jerusalem. It was right there on the border of the desert, right next to Jordan. So you could leave Jerusalem behind and all those stuffy Pharisees and go down to Jericho, because it was just like the Las Vegas of the ancient world. And what happened in Jericho stayed in Jericho. And Zacchaeus was a citizen of Jericho. And the way he got his wealth was because not only was he a tax collector, He was the tax collector of tax collectors. He was the chief tax collector. And the way a tax collector got his job was through royal appointment. That is to say, he made a very large contribution into the royal treasury for that job, or did a very special job for the king. And as a result, he got to be the chief tax collector. And that meant good things and bad. The bad part was when the king said, I need $1 million. It was up to Zacchaeus to get $1 million if he wanted to keep his job. That's the bad news. The good news is that Zacchaeus had all the authority, all the power of the king. Police, soldiers, whatever Zacchaeus needed to get that $1 million, he could. And while he was getting that $1 million, he'd take a little something, a service fee, maybe $100,000. And that's what made that job so desirable and so worth that contribution to the treasurer of the king. So Zacchaeus is quite wealthy, but his wealth also leads to a certain notoriety, because the way he secured his taxes was simply by assigning a figure to him he wanted to. So if you were wealthy, he might say, $10,000. I need $10,000 from you. There wasn't like a tax code. There wasn't a Schedule C. He just assigned whatever money he thought he could get out of you. And if he liked you, maybe cut you a little slack. And if he didn't like you, you were dog meat. And that's just the way it was, because he was the chief tax collector. And he made boodles of money and boodles of enemy. And there was one final thing that made Zacchaeus stand out in the crowd. And that was he couldn't stand out in the crowd. He was short. And all his life, he had to live with the fact that he was a short person living in a big person's world. Nothing fit him. Every day was a struggle. He got no respect. He had to work harder than anybody else simply because he was born short. But it also made him born smart. And that's why when he went to see Jesus, and he couldn't because of the crowds again, he was smart enough to know, I'll just walk down a block because this will be the route they take, and I'll climb that tree, and I'll use my brain, and I'll get box seating to see Jesus. And as Jesus approaches him, he sees him in the tree and cries out, Zacchaeus, because he knows him. Zacchaeus, hurry down. I must be in your house today. And Zacchaeus is thrilled. He's thrilled by this attention. He's thrilled by this honor and respect, the things that he was missing in his life. And the reason Jesus addresses him like this is because the wealth that he has, the influence that he has, the fame that he has, the notoriety that he has, is of no importance to Jesus. What is important to Jesus is who Zacchaeus is. Because Jesus knows his name and what his name means. Righteous. And so he addresses Zacchaeus. Not as wealthy, not as famous, not as infamous. He addresses him, treats him, honors him as righteous, and allows Zacchaeus to live in his true identity. And affirmed in that fashion, Zacchaeus, the little man, stands in the midst of that big crowd and proclaims, today, henceforth, I give half of my fortune to the poor, and anybody I cheated, I pay back fourfold. And the crowd goes wild. And Jesus blesses this action by saying, today salvation has come to this house and to this son of Abraham. Now, a lot of people will try and tell you that this is a conversion story about the Zacchaeus who was bad, who repented of his sins, found forgiveness. And you can tell the story that way, except that nowhere in there in that story does Zacchaeus express any remorse, no statement of sin or guilt. It's like Jesus really isn't all that interested in fixing Zacchaeus' past. The interest of Jesus is helping Zacchaeus find his future and reclaim the truth of who he is. Zacchaeus, the righteous, a son of Abraham. On this Sunday of All Souls, as we gather to remember those loved ones departed this life, we are comforted and affirmed by this message of the gospel. Comforted to know that if God can love a scoundrel as Zacchaeus, cannot God also love those whom we love and love us as well? And Zacchaeus becomes for us a model, an example of the love and the affirmation that God has for each and for all of us, not based on our wealth or our fame or our influence, but based on the truth and the reality of who we are deep inside. Those loved, those blessed, those righteous in the eyes of God. God invites us not to fix our past, but to embrace the future that God holds for all of us. Because as God reaches out to us, it's with no expectation other than that we, like Zacchaeus, show a little interest, walk a little differently, do something risky, climb a tree, so that we might be the people whom God acknowledges and Jesus shows interest in, like Zacchaeus, and understands who we are, our true identity as the blessed, as the beloved, as the righteous, and says to each and to all of us, hurry and come down. Today, I need to stay with you. Amen.